everyone. Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. We're back. Who would have thought it? It's been a long, I think, 3 months since we've spun together, Danny. So long hiatus, longest we've ever done in this show. And I think for me personally, very much needed. Without taking that kind of break in 9 years, it felt like a good time to step back and reflect and think about what we want to do going forward. And also, I think just life at 40 is a lot harder than life at 31. And so I think, for me, it was much needed to just take a step back, and I had a lot of things on with work and everything. Luckily, it wasn't a health-related hiatus. But it's good to be back, and good to be back with Danny. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, all good. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while.
It's been a long while. Yeah, it has been a long while, but it's good to be back. Yeah,
I haven't. I've been listening to so many podcasts and reading so much stuff. I'm well and truly in rookie mode at the moment and NFL draft mode, just reading loads of content.
Yeah, I've not consumed as much content as I normally would this time of year. I'm really trying to trust my own eyes, my own ears, really sort of get my own feelings on how I'm feeling, and trying not to. I think I'm guilty sometimes of subconscious bias, where I sort of hear things and then see them and then start to believe that that's it. And some of my analysis, I think, comes out of that. So I really wanted to try and do this year to be more around like my own personal analysis, which I always think I try and do. But I think by drowning out some of the noise, I think that's helped quite a bit this year from my perspective. But I've also picked probably the worst year to do it, because this is a pretty uninspiring class. And really, it's not a very difficult class to do much on the analysis on, which is fine.
That's going to be huge, isn't it, for a lot of them?
Yeah, and I think I look at this. I look at this landscape for the NFL draft. I think this is the first time I'm looking at it thinking there really isn't genuinely a first round full of talent for rookies for fantasy football, right? I look at this and I think there's a lot of guys that in previous years would be mid to late second round picks. I think that's how dry this talent is. And I think that the debates that people have been hearing are debates that have been happening because, let's be honest, there's not much to have of a debate. There's a clear consensus RB1, there's a clear consensus QB1, there's a clear consensus tight end 1. I think maybe there is a small debate there between Stowers and Stazik, but I don't think there is. So then I think, okay, then it's the wide receivers, which will cause some debate. But how many good wide receivers are in this class? 6, maybe.
Yeah, it feels like the more I've listened and heard from everyone, it's like people are finding it hard to separate the first 3 in whichever order, because they're all quite different, and it really depends where they go and what roles they're expected to play and stuff. And then from that point on, it's sort of like a much of a muchness, and it's like, yeah, people keep saying about picking your own flavour of who you think is the right fit. If they go somewhere and you think it's the right fit, then it might push them up above some of the others, but there's not that much between a lot of them.
I see. The thing is, I actually don't think there's a lot between these guys. I think skill set, they're very different. I think all 3 could be very, very different in terms of the way that they play the game, for sure. But I actually think from a fantasy perspective, they're all very, very similar. Tate, for me, is a guy who's just going to get a lot of volume. Same with Tyson. You're talking a guy who I think could get 30% target share and be a main alpha, kind of what we saw with Malik Neighbors in New York, kind of thing.
If he can stay fit.
And then you've got Lemon, who again, he separates. He's a good slot receiver. It's a really interesting one, because we've kind of gone through years of not having great slot receivers come into the NFL, and now you've got a couple here. But I think I look at these guys and I think they're all going to play that sort of Chris Godwin inside, Marvin Harrison Jr., that kind of role where they're going to play sort of inside and be the volume guys. Right. So it is going to be landing spot dependent. Who's going into the better offense? Who's going into the higher efficient offense? Who's going to be part of a team that's going to score more points? Yeah. And I think that's where wherever you have them ranked now is fine. I think the post ranking will be more important because of where they land. And it baffles me because over the years, if you've been listening to mainstream podcasts, they've always told you that landing spot doesn't matter. They've always told you that it's about talent and, draft capital and what people spend to acquire you is kind of along with their athletical traits and their metrics that they attribute in college when they break out, the breakout model and all these sorts of things have always been deemed to be the most crucial factors to success. And I don't doubt that was true once upon a time, but I think we're in a new era of the NFL and a new era in particular for fantasy football. And I think you and I are going to talk about this a lot over the next 3 months, in my opinion, that actually we're moving away from a volume-based game and we're moving to an efficiency-based game. And actually, I think that wherever these guys go, the higher octane, higher and more efficient offense is where the most successful one of these three is going to come from. So I actually don't think their profile for these 3 guys matters all that much.
Yeah.
I think where you could pick them wherever you want to go. You want to have 1 at 2, 1 at 3, 1 at 4. I don't really care. That's fine. How you want to split them is fine. I'm not going to have a big debate with you because actually the debate for me will start when their numbers are called.
Yeah. Would you see them, if they all got good landing spots, would you see them as being wide receiver 1s or 2s on those teams? Obviously, it depends who they go to, but like say,
that's the thing, right?
Are any of them natural what you'd class as wide receiver 1s? Or
I definitely think Tyson is. I think Tyson's a sure one, but there's an injury concern there. I think Tate is too. Lemon is the one of the 3. I probably would say he is not the main guy. I think he's a high volume slot guy, but I don't think he's the big target guy. So what I mean by that is he'll get targets, but he'd be targets in like a safety situation. I don't think he's like going to be the big needle mover like stretching down the field and those kind of elements is kind of what I mean to that. Yeah. So I think that's where it differs quite significantly for me. Like I sit there and think that, when I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about like which one of these guys is going to be great, I think 2 of them are going to be very, very good. I think 1 will be all right. And maybe all 3 can be. Again, I think it is landing spot dependent. I think it is going to change a little bit based on where they land. But at the same point,
I was going to say, would you say it's all like a lot of stuff I've heard, Tate versus Tyson would be what's name? That Tyson, if they were playing to the ceilings and playing regularly to the ceiling, Tyson might actually be better as in the higher upside, but Tate is more consistent and he would be consistently getting you the scores every week if he's in the right team, whereas Tyson will have some off the wall games and then some lower games, and it's not as steady, if you know what I mean.
Again, I think in previous years, I think we could have really sort of I think for me, when I'm looking at when I'm thinking of these guys, right, and I'm sitting there, I think I could sit here and have a big song and dance on the debate now, and I could really sort of push it and say, right, one's going to be better than the other. I really am of this opinion now that actually the landing spot with the quarterback they're going to be paired with is really going to determine that outcome. I really have no strong feeling either way. I think that if you want my analysis on these players as they stand now, Tyson, I don't think is as good as athletically as Tate. But what he does do that's elite is he wins really early in the route. So when you're thinking about NFL production, he dusts his guy very, very early in the route and gets space and gets open, and that's what's going to get you a lot of targets in the NFL, and that's why he has that sort of feel of a Malik Neighbors of getting a 30% target share. But for that to happen, he has to be on a team with a pretty decent quarterback. I don't have to say exceptional, but a pretty decent quarterback.
Yeah.
And he has to be on a team where there isn't anyone else who's going to get the ball, kind of like Malik Neighbors a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
If he falls onto a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then his chances of that with Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, and that it doesn't happen. So, again, I think when I'm thinking of these guys, Tate for me feels like the guy who can go into more schemes, and there's better paths for Tate to be more successful.
Yeah.
Because I think that his game, with the way that he runs his routes, with the way that he can win with the ball, he can win in different ways. He's not a one-trick pony. Means he can be schemed in different ways to be successful, and he's got a bit more versatility about him. That's where I think, for me, the paths to victory for Tate are higher, which is why I have him the highest. The reason I have Tyson the lowest is because he is a bit of a one-trick pony, in the sense of he has to win early. If he doesn't win early, he doesn't win the route. Lemon, I think, is a guy who just has a lot of ability to separate and make space, and it has great, yards after the catch, and he's a great, he can win a lot of those contested catches. Again, that's going to get you a lot of play in the NFL. All three of these are pretty good. We are splitting hairs. I think for me, what we've seen in the last year, maybe 2 years in particular, is this moving away from volume and moving towards efficiency. And not all targets and not all catches are the same. And therefore, it's who's getting the high value touches, who's getting and who's in the offense that is more high octane, is going to have more opportunities to score. Who is going to be the wide receiver that is going to play in a scheme that's more up tempo, that's going to run more plays, versus something that's in a claggy, stale offense. Like, for example, if one of these three falls into Miami or Arizona or the Tennessee, my outlook on them changes completely for the next 2 years. Like, they all of a sudden go from being in the top three wide receivers to I could easily move them down depending on where others place.
Yeah.
So I think, this is a very contrarian train of thought, right? You're conditioned, you're told by podcasts that the statistics matter, that the breakout score matters, that landing spot doesn't matter. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I just don't believe that we are in an NFL that scheme and fit and the tempo of an offense and the way that offense produces isn't important. I think it's the most fundamentally important. You're told that you need to draft players off good offenses, but it's actually the why, which is that efficiency, which is about, we've seen such an influx of talent come into the NFL in the last 7 or 8 years that I would say the NFL talent pool is as deep as it's ever been in most positions. It used to be you didn't have 32 good starting running backs in the NFL. You didn't have 32 good starting tight ends in the NFL. You certainly didn't have 64 good starting wide receivers in the NFL or 32 good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd argue we're at the point now where we probably do. And so with that comes a lack of alpha touches. That actually those touches are going to be less important. The volume is less important. And it's actually where you get the ball, how you get the ball. But more importantly, how efficient you are with the ball is more important. I think those yards per route run, targets per route run metrics that we talk about every year become even more important this year. And I think more importantly, the efficiency of yards after catch, yards after contact for running backs, I think are going to be even more fundamentally important, because the way that these offenses have schemed, running backs that aren't averaging 3 yards after contact, it means that the scheme isn't doing its job. And then therefore that means that the running back isn't perhaps as valuable as someone who is getting those touches. So it's, again, we used to sort of look at running backs and we used to say, right, 300 touches was elite performance. That's kind of what you wanted. We saw last year so many guys had over 300 touches, a record-breaking amount, that actually but they separated still by 80 to 100, maybe more points, because actually it was the not the volume of touches, but it was how much each touch was worth from a fantasy point perspective that was fundamentally important. And I think that's where people aren't catching up. Perhaps, hopefully, where our listeners will catch up this year, because I think this is a real sea change for the next 5 years. And we've seen it with these coaching hires, that these coaching hires are going to be fundamentally important to the way that the game is played over the next few years. And people are going from the Shanahan tree. People want these teams that are running a high volume of plays, and they're running at a very fast tempo. And that means when you're playing at more plays per game and a higher tempo, you're taking less deep shots. You're taking less sort of gamble, long plays. It's more about short, sharp efficiency. It's about, throwing an out route for 6 yards. It's about throwing into the slot and trying to get yourself 7 or 8 yards. It's not about always hitting the hero ball. Yeah. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And then again, that goes into this conversation of those three. It's where they landed for me is going to be the fundamental importance, because really there isn't that much between them all. Now, when you start looking at guys like Omar Cooper, Denzel Boston, they become interesting. Where do they land? How important is their landing spot? Is there a pathway for them to challenge over the other three? That's something that we'll have to kind of see. So when we sit here in a week's time and we've got Hot Seat Mags on and we're reviewing night one of the NFL draft, the conversation that we'll have will be very lively, because no doubt those three guys would have been picked.
Yeah.
Where have they gone? What are we likely to expect? And can any of these future guys who haven't been picked yet when we speak challenge those three? I think that's the conversation I'm looking forward to having, because right now
it's hard to gauge, isn't it?
It's not so much just hard to gauge. It's just you're splitting hairs. And if you want to plant a flag for a guy, like, by all means plant a flag for a guy. Like, I'm not telling you not to, but
I did one like one of the dynasty drafts I'm in. We did it probably 6 weeks ago, maybe at this point. It's called obviously it's early draft. So I had the 111, the 211, and I did them the probably looking at it now, maybe the wrong way round, but I got Stowers at the 211. But I probably paid a bit too much on the 111. I got Surratt because I just had what I'd read at the time, and he just felt like a sneaky play. But if it's combined, it seems good value, but I could have maybe got a bit better value if I'd gone for someone else in the 111. But Star Wars at 211 seemed very good. And it was the same league that I played in a few years ago, where I got Laporta in something like round 3 or 4 of my rookie draft. And I got some other ones as well. Like, just because you're listening to so many things and you're taking these in, some of them really paid off. And I won the league the first season, and a lot of it came down to the round rookie drafts, because we do it that early before people are switched on to what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that's the important piece, right? In terms of where you're going to win and lose leagues now is how quickly you're up to the tempo of finding those values, like you mentioned with Laporta. And I quite like Stowers at the 211. Yeah, you might have overpaid for the 111. So I think this year, I always sort of say, and when you're getting to the back end of the first round, your hit rate is particularly low. I think Fantasy Sanctuary Rich told me this one, that basically from the 110 onwards, your chance of success of that pick hitting is less than 10%.
Yeah.
So your chance of success from that pick onwards is low, right? And so I never mind anyone swinging at that point to go and get a guy that you think is going to outperform his ADP, because I think it'd be really easy to pick a player and be safe. And I think, if you've got a guy, that's where you want to go, then I think fine, that's what you got to do. But I just think if you're just going with chalk there, you're probably going to fail. Like the easy thing, like you took Surratt. I don't hate Surratt at 11, by the way, because I'm at 13 in my ranks. So it's not like horrible.
Yeah. It was done like 6 weeks ago, I think, at this point.
My worry with Surratt is the school he's coming from, the competition he's played with, and how does that correlate? But to be honest, like I have him significantly over Brazel, because I just think Brazel is, in best ball, I'd have Brazel over Surratt, because I think he could be an absolutely huge target. But I don't think in a week-to-week I'd want Chris Brazel anywhere near a roster, because starting him would be an absolute nightmare. Like, if you're taking him hoping you don't play against him in a spike week, because Chris Brazel is going to be the sort of player that's going to have like a 32-point spike week and then not do anything for 4 weeks.
Or someone.
Yeah, worse, because at least Worthy will consistently put up some points. Whereas I see Chris Brazel as like peak Deshaun Jackson. Like, have a monster week and then not do anything for a month. So I think, like, I look at him and think, I don't want part of it. Like, to me, it's like Chris Bell. Like, Chris Bell is going to be someone who's not going to get anywhere near enough volume from a catch perspective, but he could score 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game because he's so successful in how he wins in the red zone.
Yeah.
So I look at someone like Chris Bell and think, well, I hate picking touchdown-dependent players, but he's effectively, you're playing a tight end at wide receiver. That's how I view him. So I think it's really tough. Like, I genuinely went through this, and I think there isn't 20 fantasy football gems in this rookie draft.
Yeah.
So
anyone I know who's reviewed them all and doing their own rankings says by the time they get to about 15 or 16, they start getting bored of actually reviewing them, because there's just nothing really grabbing them. Like, there's just like, oh, here's another one I've got to watch. Here's another one I've got to review, instead of being excited about watching the players.
No. And there isn't a lot there. There just isn't. And that's fine. And like, there doesn't need to be, but
it's tricky though when you've got all these picks and you know that next year potentially it's very good, and no one wants to trade this year's picks for next year's picks. So I'm trying to buy players with them instead. But even then, a lot of people know this as well, and they're very reluctant to take those picks off you as well. So it's hard.
But the thing is that if you'd asked people about the 2025 draft class, they would have said the 2026 draft class is better. There's no guarantee that the 2027 class is better because of NIL, because of the transfer portal, because of everything that's going on in college football. There is absolutely no guarantee that the draft will be better. It should be. I mean, for me, it can't get any worse. Like, I genuinely think this is as bad as the I think the 2023 draft was pretty bad. I'm thinking like Malik Willis and
how many quarterbacks around at the moment,
and Kenny Pickett. Yeah, there wasn't, and it drove everyone else up. So if you're picking late that year, you struggle to pick a decent player.
I've done in a few. I am not in loads. I'm in only about 12. But what I've been doing with some of mine is I've been picking up those quarterbacks that are like, in Dynasty they're ranked probably like, I don't know, 25 to 30. But in redraft they'd be ranked maybe like 18 or 20. Like a Jared Goff, for example. I was using some of my late picks to pick up players like that I know will keep my team ticking over with points. And at the same time, I'm not missing out on anything because I'm not really giving up anything for it. And I'm actually making my team better for a couple of years while I've kicked the can down for the next year to see who's in the next draft.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think really you've got to understand your league. You've got to understand what you're trying to achieve out of your league. And you're trying to think about where you can win. And the people in your league, it's really important because you're going to have some who you. I think it's interesting. I think you're going to have some leagues where you're not going to get away with. Some of those leagues you're not going to be able to get the players that you want, so you have to think about ways around them to find them. And I think every league is different, right? You'll find those. I tend to find that people tend to get the dynasty analysis from the same places.
Well,
and so what happens is everyone wants the same players.
Yeah.
And so the pool gets really like...
Do you know what I was going to say? Just what you... Do you know what you just took it right out of me mouth? I was going to say, you're talking before around the coaches and who they follow, as in like like Shanahan trees or whatever. It's like that. I was about to say it's like that with the drafters as well. It's like you've got the fantasy points drafters, you've got the dynasty, the sanctuary drafters, you've got the guy, and they all pick one to follow more than the rest. And you can sort of, after a while, you can start to see who a lot of them are. So you can go in and have a look at, okay, who are they ranking? So I think roughly they might be doing this. So I'll go in a different way. And I think you can definitely, once you start to get to know some of the managers, you can definitely start to pick up on stuff like that. So if you know that they're looking at certain content, just go and have a quick look and see what they're rating. And then where you can see it and you don't agree, that's where you can make your difference, I think. And I do that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I generally think that if you do that and you work out where people are drafting, I don't think people are... It's really interesting, right? When I wrote the first fantasy football playbook back in 2020, I talked about, disguising where your rankings are from. If you can discern where people are drafting from, you'll have a huge competitive edge. And you can tell the drafters that draft off ADP and the drafters who draft from all his. And I think with the explosion of fantasy football content, I think it's really fascinating because there's more content on how to win fantasy football, out fantasy football, than there ever has been before. And yet, ironically, I would argue that fantasy players are lazier than they ever have been because they've got all these tools at their disposal that they're using the same tools as everybody else, 100%. And they're not seeking that differential. And I find that it's interesting. I went to a draft in person last year, and everyone drafted off my rankings, and then was wondering why I wasn't picking the players that were next up on my rankings because I noticed they were drafting from my rankings.
Yeah, so you knew what...
Because no one knew my rankings better than me, right? So all of a sudden, I'm pivoting in a very, very different way. Yeah. Because no one was doing rankings for this particular league because of the way the scoring was set. So it's kind of one of those that I zeroed in on that and was able to pivot very quickly and got a playoff performance out of it and did pretty well. Didn't win the league. It was a mass tournament. But the bottom line is that you have to be contrarian. We've talked about this for years on this pod, that if you're not being contrarian, your paths to victory are very narrow because it becomes a luck-based league.
Yeah.
If you play like everybody else plays and you're playing and pooling for the same players and you're drafting in the order, it becomes a luck-based league on do your players remain fit. The skill that's in that is marginal. It takes great skill to be contrarian and to do something that goes against the rest of the grain and do something different.
What I did last year, I remember telling you about this. I don't know if I told you on a pod or just chatting about it, but when it came to after the rookie draft, what I did last year was I got an Excel sheet and I went through a ton of different content creators and found the rankings for every one of them, and I put them all in a sheet. So I could have yours, I could have the sanctuaries, I could have fantasy points, and that might be 3 or 4 different creators, so 3 or 4 different columns. Then there could be some of fantasy, whoever content you like. I must have had about 15 to 20 people in the sheet, and I put them all in next to each other. And then I start doing my analysis on them as a combined list and seeing, from a value point of view, okay, who are the ones who are the dart throws that these guys are all looking at in different ways. And then I start building up my own consolidated rankings based off a mixture of the 20 of them. So I'm not doing anything the way that anyone in particular is doing. I'm sort of the averages from them all, and it seemed to work. It's always seemed to work well when it comes to picking rookie drafts picks. It's not foolproof; it never will be. No. But it's a different way of drafting than what anyone else was drafting because they've got their own set of rankings, whereas I was using maybe 20 different people's all mixed into one.
Yeah, exactly that.
I don't watch them playing till they come into the NFL, so I can't sit there and go, "Oh, I've watched this guy 10 times. I know that this guy is going to be this," and I don't watch enough college football to know that. So I have to try a different approach.
But it goes back to what I said at the top. What you just said there is where I think there is a fundamental change of where we're going versus where we've come from.
Yeah.
And where I don't think that the analysis or the way that talent or players or fantasy analysis is done has caught up with where we are in the reality of the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's not besmirching, that's not bad-mouthing anybody, by the way. People have their own ways of working, their own ways of analysis. I absolutely dispute absolutely no one. People have a process. Their process should be different. I don't think anybody is out there putting bad content out. So I don't want people to interpret what I'm saying is incorrect and taking words out of my mouth saying that people are doing it the wrong way. They're not doing it the wrong way. But the outcome is that people are trying to manifest outcomes of players based on what they've seen on tape. And that's okay. That traditionally is how the NFL has drafted. The problem we're at now, I went on a pod 13 months ago and said that Shedeur Sanders will be a 4th round pick. And people looked at me and thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
And so because his style of play doesn't fit with what the NFL needs for the needs and the requirements of where those players are likely to be taken. And it really was a light bulb moment for me that the NFL has shifted away from, not entirely, because I think bad organizations still make really bad decisions, but most NFL organizations are not picking best player available anymore. They're picking best player available for scheme.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. In the previous iterations of the NFL, coaches were picking players based on talent and we're trying to shoehorn talent into scheme.
Yeah.
And that's where you could get really talented players who were incredible coming into the process, not get to the outcome that people expected. And it's because people used to blame the coaching. It was the coaching. In some cases, it probably was the coaching. In other cases, it was because the player was asked to do something that's not in their skill set.
Yeah.
And was set up to fail from the start.
It takes them a while to learn it.
Correct. Yeah. Or too long. And the pressure insurmountable. So I look at examples of why was CJ Stroud's rookie year so much more fundamentally successful than his future years. Because the way that the team was schemed up suited the way that he plays then. Yeah. The scheme changed. His performance dropped off. Why is it that rookies struggle? Some rookies struggle when they come into the league, and some rookies go lights up. What changes? Yeah. It's the scheme. It's the coaches for one, but it's the way that the coaches play. Caleb Williams went from having one of the worst rookie years we've ever seen to a great sophomore season and it wasn't just, he's got a new coach. It was a whole new scheme. It was the way that the offense was designed. He had better weapons, of course he did, but that doesn't transcend the entire gap of what we've seen. Yeah. At the end of the day, that it is about the schematics. It's about the way that the team is schemed and the way that those players are put into positions to win and how efficient they are every time they've got the football. Yeah. And so we have to, people listening to this show, whether that's 1 of you, 100 of you, 1,000 of you, 10,000 of you, however many it is, need to recondition yourselves into thinking that actually what you've seen in tape gets you so far, what you've seen in college gets you so far, the stats, the athletic traits get you so far, but ultimately the player has to match the scheme that he is going into, or the outcomes that you're projecting are not going to happen. And that's the thing that you've got to really look at, and that's a hard thing to understand, because if you don't understand the offensive schemes, and if you don't, that's fine. Not many people do. I get it. It's not an easy skill. But if you can find content that talks about scheme fit and talks about the way these players are going to win in the scheme and talk about the efficiency they're going to have, you're going to be in a place where you're going to win fantasy championships this year, because you're going to get the traditionalists who are going to draft on volume, and you're going to get the traditionalists who are going to just pick players off of good offenses, and that will work to a degree. The difference between good or great is the people that are getting the steals. There will be plenty of them this year at ADP, because they understand that there's a player that's criminally undervalued because their skill set's never been shown, but in this scheme, they will go electric. We will highlight those players over the next 3 or 4 months. We'll make sure that you're in tip-top space. That's why you need to stay listening to this channel. We've got some smart people coming on over the next few weeks, and it's going to be a fascinating set of conversations we're going to have. But to preface what we're going to be talking about, yes, we're going to talk about players. Yes, we're going to talk about rankings. Yes, we're going to talk about all these things, but everything is going to be looking through the lens of the scheme, of the coach, of the offense, and how these players are either going to be overrated or underrated, so we know where to make our hedges.
But also as well, it's worth highlighting for any of the people listening that have basically taken their brain off for the last month or two, even how just the sheer volume of changes there's actually been, because there's so many changes, not just from head coaches, but from offensive coaches, defensive coaches. There's tons of them. And that's where your analysis will be invaluable, is to try to figure out, okay, the team played this way before under this coach, but under the new coach, we're expecting this. This will then lead to these type of play, these positions doing better, these positions may be struggling. That's exactly the type of content they're going to need.
Yeah, and it's not even just my content or my thought process. It's the thought process of our guests. We're going to get some amazing people on coming to talk about this stuff at every level. And we're really going to analyze a lot better opportunities to win. And it's about finding those undervalued assets and staying away from those overvalued assets. And, you know, there are so many themes, and I put a link into the show notes below. It's effectively a think piece of how I think this year is a huge change for fantasy football, and how we're moving away from volume and we're moving towards efficiency. And that you're either going to get on the train or you're not. And where I think these efficiency plays are going to come from. And I break it down in really simple terms, but we're going to really cover this in more detail. So if you want to read, there's a link to it in the show notes. That's, you know, have a read, ask questions, interact with it. Sign up to the Patreon. We'll do special Patreon podcasts on it as well. So the idea is that if you're worried about what I'm saying about I don't understand scheme, you don't need to understand it. We're here to tell you, and it won't be me. It'll be really much more intelligent people than myself. But we're going to get sharp in identifying opportunities to really attack drafts. And we're going to be really contrarian. This is going to be a contrarian army that we're building. We're going to be different to every other drafter out there. So we're going to go into drafts and we're going to be fundamentally different. That people are going to look and question at our picks. They're going to not like our drafts. They're going to think we've overpaid and underpaid for certain players. And that's absolutely fine. You know, I never go into a mock draft thinking, or a draft and then do one of those scoring analysis afterwards and try and win a popular vote. If I have, I've done something wrong. You know, for me, you know, those rankings of like keep, trade, cut and whatever, like, oh, you know, you're projected to win this league, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you've done that, you've done it wrong. You've just appeased to the median. You know, I hate it when people go on to X and say who won this draft. Like, you know, I can't stand that sort of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, we've done it from an engagement content perspective, but more because we've had guests on and we're interested in getting different takes on what people thought. But we didn't precursor it with, I drafted here, did you think I won this draft? Yeah. And fundamentally, I don't want to win any of those opinions. I don't want to win an opinion draft because my best teams never do. It's about being contrarian. It's about being different to everybody else. And if you've drafted differently and you're getting a C grade or a D grade and you're in the bottom half, I'd argue you might have done it well. I mean, you don't want to be last because that says you've had a really bad run. But I think if you're 6 to 10, I think you're probably doing it right. Don't know what you think, Danny, but it's
not even just the fact that you do it to be different. It's boring if you just do the same thing all the time. Yeah. I like to try and mix up my teams and try one approach on one way and then another one in a different and see what pays off. But it's, yeah, I don't get it. I don't know why anyone would just draft from someone's set of rankings and that's it and nothing else. It's especially when half the people are looking at the same things as well. It's just bonkers to me.
I think it's groupthink, Danny. We've talked about it a few times on here that people look to draft and it's symptomatic of, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, right? If I'm wrong, fine. I think fundamentally people want to be viewed as drafting well, as, seeking advice and getting
100%.
validation, right? And I think the amount of times I see this, I made this trade. Do you think I won the trade? Like, fundamentally, that question in its own is completely the wrong way to play fantasy football. You're not trying to win trades. You're trying to make your team better.
Yeah.
You can win a trade and your team has got 10 times worse. Like, ultimately, that is a realistic outcome. Like, for me, it's about how do you break through the noise? How do you stand on your own 2 feet and feel confident in the draft choices you make? And that's what's made this show different in every way. People ask me what the niche is, and I go with the teach a guy to fish kind of philosophy, because ultimately I know people will gateway from this content because eventually they'll realize that they can come and do their own analysis and they can understand where to find the edges, and they'll find their own edges, and then they'll find the content that helps them find the edges. Yeah. We're kind of helping people identify where to look. Then people will go, okay, well, I know where to look. Yeah. Now I need the deep analysis of the statistics to find it. And that's fine. If people gateway to that, then we have done our jobs. But we're here for the strategy and the input of what we do in terms of the game think and the game theory. That's what this pod has always been different compared to everybody else. We won't tell you the players to pick. We'll tell you why you pick them.
I find one big thing that jumps out to me with a lot of drafters is it's they're scared to fail. So what happens is they would rather pick a steady team, be in the middle, and they can say, oh, look, I did okay. I got to this round of this big tournament, instead of going to win. I'd rather get knocked out in the first round and try to go for it.
All day long. There's nothing worse than a 6 and 7 team. There's nothing worse.
I think that's where a lot of people end up, though, because they're like, I have to pay the safe option here because I can't. If that doesn't work, blah blah. But even if it works, it's just going to get you in the middle anyway. It's like you've just got to go for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think for me, you play to win. You take risks.
I just don't get it. I don't see the point. I get it. Yeah,
I do get it. I do get it, and I'll tell you why I get it. I get it because people don't like to lose, and ultimately, people think that drafting an okay team is better than drafting a bad team.
Yeah.
But the difference with drafting a bad team is it depends on what. Again, this goes for dynasty leagues, right? The reason I find dynasty leagues probably not as exciting as the next person, and someone asked me this, like, why do you prefer redraft to dynasty?
Yeah, I do as well.
The problem, my fundamental problem with dynasty is this: if you're playing in a true dynasty league with the same people, and those people, I think you and I talked about this week or last week or whenever I think we did. If you're playing in a true maybe I did it on the pod with Johnny, Orkney Bowl Johnny.
Yeah.
Right, and I think I talked about this in the Meet the GM. I did. I said, if you're playing in the same league with the same people for 10 years, no one leaves, or 12 years, or however long, that to me is the definition of a true dynasty. That will be incredible, right? That's an incredible league to be part of, where the dynamics will be of all those different proprietaries of people building a team for the future versus those trying to win now versus those that are just waiting for something to happen a couple of pieces away, and you'll have that nice, even like a cake, you'll spread all those different layers of all those teams in different places. The handful that are the contenders, the handful that are a couple of pieces away from being contenders, and then those that are in a complete rebuild. In a dynasty league, and unfortunately since COVID, dynasties exploded, but what it's also meant is that a lot of people leave leagues when they're not winning. They decide to go on this rebuild, decide the rebuild is too hard, and then they leave, and it's down to someone else to rebuild. Is that when you change the owner, you change the dynamic of the league. And so what eventually happens is that you don't have that same dynamic. And so the league conditions change every year, but now you're playing with a stacked deck. So whereas in a redraft, the league conditions change every year, but everyone's on an even playing field until the draft. In a dynasty league, you're effectively playing a semi-redraft because people are playing, you got new owners coming in every year, but there's no opportunity for those owners to make significant changes other than making crazy trades. And then all of a sudden the deck gets stacked. Yeah. And that doesn't excite me half as much as just playing it out from the beginning in the same conditions, and everyone's playing under the same conditions.
My other issue as well is I seem to get, and it gets a bit tedious after a while. You get excited to join all these leagues, but then you realise you're in the same leagues with the same people, and there's too many of the same ones. So I'm in 12 leagues, I'd rather be in 12 or 12 different groups of people. Yeah. But it turns out that because of the way when I first started doing them, I'm getting those league invites from the same places. Out those 12 leagues, probably 6 of them are with the same managers. So it gets a bit boring, and it gets to the point where if you know how they're going to trade, and it's very hard to get trades done because you're in those other leagues with them, and it's the same approach in every one of them. And it's like if you don't see them, see things in a different way. It can be so hard to get the trades done. So I'd rather be with different people all the time. If I was doing it again now, that's what I would be doing. Every time I'd be looking for different people to play with.
Yeah, and different people want different things, right? And listen, I'm not here to tell anyone how to play fantasy football or what conduces fun for anybody, right? If your idea of fun is playing in the same leagues with the same people, then you crack on, do your thing. Like that's great. Like I generally hold no judgment, and I don't mean this in a horrible way. When I talk about these things, I talk about them about how I feel and my opinion on it. If your worldview is actually you really like taking over an orphan that's really difficult and turning it around, and doing mega trades and all those sorts of things, like all power to you, rock on. I think that's awesome. I think any way that you engage in fantasy football in any way is a win. And more people should be like that. So like, I'm not trying to tell people how to play the game here, because people do what they want to do. I think for us and our home and why we do what we do is that I'm all about seeking the contrarian view. And I think you are as well, Danny, that we're trying to be different. We're trying to look at the same set of things in a different way. And I always think back to a book by Matthew Said. And if anyone doesn't know who Matthew Said is a former British and English table tennis champion who then went on to write for the Times as a sports columnist, and then also as a business columnist, and now he does guest speakers. He's written a number of books. He also did a podcast with Andy Flintoff and Robbie Savage called Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy for BBC about 10-15 years ago, which was exceptional. He wrote a book called Rebel Ideas, and basically it was taking the study of people who come from the same background, economical, ethnic, geographical background, who went to the same school with the same education, with the same opportunities as everybody else in the same socioeconomic class. You put 10 people like that in a room together and give them a puzzle to solve, and then you get 10 people from all different economical backgrounds, from all different socioeconomical backgrounds, from all different ethnicity backgrounds, different countries, whatever. And you stick 10 people from 10 different backgrounds in a room, the 10 from the different backgrounds will solve the problem 2 to 3 times faster. And the reason why is because the group who all look, draft, act, and think the same don't want to really annoy anybody. Like ultimately, they value the opinion of everyone around them because they're people.
Yeah.
And so they're not afraid, or they're afraid to put their head up above the parapet. So what happens is that they end up just going along with a groupthink consensus in which no one might actually believe is the answer, but they're too scared to differentiate themselves. Whereas the group from the different backgrounds are all not afraid to speak because they're all not trying to impress anybody. They're just there to get their point of view across. So they get to the answer much quicker because they're able to take all the different ideas from all the different perspectives and point of views to get to the right answer. And I feel like that's what this podcast is. It's about taking that diverse thinking. It's taking everybody's opinions and taking all our guests' opinions and our thinking, and it's looking at it through a different lens and coming up with a different way of viewing the consensus and saying, well, we think it's different and here is why. And you don't have to go along with it. Like, you can sit here and disagree, and that's the beauty of the world that we live in. And I don't want people to wholeheartedly agree and just walk along with what we say blindly without challenging it. But I think that we'll give a different perspective, that at least if you take someone else's perspective, our perspective, and someone else's perspective, you'll get to your answer of truth quicker.
100%. That's basically what I was doing with the rankings without even realizing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's what we're presenting as a thesis. This has got very, psychological and very physiological and thinking about that. But I think it's a good opening podcast to talk about why we're different, what we do differently, what you can expect over the next 3 months. And if that's a bit of you, hit that subscribe button, write some comments, integrate with us, follow us on the journey together as we take it, and help us shape it, help us ask the questions, help us dig into the data, help us challenge the people that we're going to have on, and challenge this way of thinking until we're ready to get to draft season and exploit it through all the hard work that we're going to do. And we're going to start that mountain today. Before we sign off, let's talk about some big news and big things that happened to you this offseason, Danny, and what is going to be coming to the Emerald Isle in a few months. Well, 2 months' time, I guess.
Yeah, 2 months. Yeah, I don't know. I got an email out of the blue. So a couple of years ago, I filled in on the Scottish Bowl there was a link about where people, would you ever be interested in bringing it to other countries? And I clicked on it a couple of years ago, never thought anything of it. And then randomly about 2 months ago, I got an email from John Bosch saying, you said you'd be interested in looking at a Scottish Bowl live draft in Dublin, in Ireland. Are you still interested? And I messaged back saying, yeah. And then he sent me a form with loads of questions about, he wants to know more about me and what I could bring to the draft and all the rest of it. Loads of different questions. I sent it back to him, and then literally the next day he replied saying, right, let's go for it. And I had no clue what I was doing, if I'm honest. I sort of just made it up as I went. So I started looking at, there was a window of dates that you could do it, some between this date and that date. So I just started doing a ton of research on what's in Ireland on those weekends, because if you have any big concerts on or big show things on, the hotels and stuff will get booked out very quickly and location wise. So I went through it all, and I found that the 20th of June seemed to be the weekend where there was the least amount of stuff going on in the city. So I went into the city, spoke to a ton of different locations, and I found one. And it just happens to be exactly where I met you for the first time. So when the college football's on, and Pat McAfee does a show in the main road on Dame Street, right outside where the stage is the bar that this place is going to be. It's called the Trinity Bar, and it's right in the centre. So easy to get to. So if you're coming in via planes, it's right in the centre. If you're coming in trains, they'll drop you right in the centre. It's 5-minute walk from the train station, and then any of the bus routes all go on Dame Street. So it will literally drop you outside the door. So I've got the basement of the Trinity Bar. It's a sports bar. So I had to answer quite a lot of questions with those guys because the World Cup is on at the same time. So we had to make sure that it didn't clash with any of the live World Cup games, because they'll have loads. They'll have like the Dutch fans there for the afternoon, or the Brazil fans, or whoever it is. So it just happens that there's a gap in between. So there's World Cup matches late at night and then the following evening. But in between, in the afternoon, is when we've got our draft. So it's 1 till 5 in Dublin on the 20th of June. And at the moment, we're hoping to fill. The original plan was, can we fill 2 drafts and then build it up year by year? But we've already gone past the 2, and we're getting close to filling 3 at the moment. So we've got the theme, as some people don't know, is video games this year. So we've got the Sensible Soccer division, we've got the Halo division, and we've got the Lemmings division. And Halo's already full. We're 2 or 3 away from filling Sensible Soccer, and then we've got a few others that have joined the Lemmings one. So I think we're looking for 36 and a couple of backups, and we're already up to 30. I think it's 33. So it's filling up fast. I doubt it, but maybe there's a chance we get a 4th one. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But it's it's filling up. I've been putting a lot of X posts out and Blue Sky posts. And then we're starting to get a few people that other people will know getting involved as well. So like a column from Rotoviz is going to be there, and then someone else who's not too far away from me at this minute in time is making a trip over, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be there, mate. So book my flights. I haven't booked accommodation, but I will do. So yeah, there's going to be a few of us. I think a few from the UK are coming over, hopefully. But I've played with Irish fantasy football players in the past. There's a few.
You know more
like,
than I know.
There's a few like Jer and who I'd never met, who I'm buzzing to see. And
so it's me and Eric are running it. So Eric has been between the two of us. Like I got the venue and stuff, but Eric knows the community, so he's got quite a lot of people signed up. He's like, I think it was DLF he worked for, but he was more behind the scenes on the actual the technology side of things. So he knows a lot of stuff as well. But he also knows the likes of John Bosch very well. So he's had conversations with him this week, which sort of leads into when we were talking about potentially having a pod where we talk a bit more about Scott Fishball. John Bosch would come on as well to talk about it. So that was, I forgot to mention that to you the other day. So that would be a good one. Like, and potentially, I said it joking, but they were working on to see if they could get Scott to come on himself as well, which would be quite interesting.
We'll get Scott on. Scott's long overdue to come on here, so we'll get Scott on. We'll get people on. We'll talk about it. It's going to be a great event. So, the link is in the show notes below. Do sign up. It'd be great to draft with you in Dublin.
But come and have it. If you can't make Dublin, go join the London one. There's a London one as well.
There's also one in Barcelona I've seen.
Well, there's quite a few. They've got them in Australia now as well, and there's a new one in
Australia
Mexico.
was last year, but I think there's the guys in France wanted to do one. I don't know if they're
popping up, and like it's Dublin this year. Maybe it's in Cork or somewhere, or Belfast or somewhere next year. So we're looking to build up an Irish community, and that doesn't mean you have to be Irish, because obviously listen to my accent, but it's more around people that. Yeah, obviously England has quite a big following already, but we're trying to build it up in Ireland, and we'll probably build some other leagues based off everybody meeting up as well. So, yeah, it's just trying to help. And then we're
going to have a party. I can't wait. Committed to be there. Flights are booked. So, if you want to come and draft with me, or we'll come and have a day, like, it's going to be great fun. Patrick, who's Mugs NFL, for those of you, former FFCC champion, he's coming over. We're trying to get a few folks over, so it's going to be a great crack. We're going to have a great day. I genuinely cannot wait for it.
It's also what's like, even when the draft's done, like literally within an hour of the draft done, there's World Cup matches on. Holland against Sweden, Germany against the Ivory Coast, I think it is. There's some very good games coming on after it as well. So like, it's a day of eating food, drinking if you want to drink, and loads
socializing. It's being with people.
Football. Yeah, loads of fantasy football. We might even have a few other types of drafts running at the same time on their sleeper on people's phones while they're doing the live draft as well.
I'm sure we will. It'll be great. Genuinely looking forward to it. So do check it out. Link is below. So go ahead and if you're interested, and look, if you've always wanted to play in the Scott Fish Bowl, I don't want to go as far to say it's guaranteed entry, but it's by far one of the easier routes to get in.
The easiest route to get in, yeah.
It's definitely the easiest route to get in.
Live drafters first.
So, if you've always wanted to play, you've heard about it on all your favorite podcasts, and you can get to Ireland fairly easily. You get to draft with us, but if not, go see the London one or other ones.
And we will cover once they have announced the score and stuff. We will cover that as well. So if you're a bit scared of doing a live draft, we'll be covering plenty of it before the draft as well, to give you as much information as you need. Absolutely,
we'll have you covered. Also brings us on to the FFCC. We've launched that for 2026. So yes. Please do link to that below. You can sign up for the FFCC 2026. More details of that as we get through the month as well. We're proud to crown Stevie as our winner last year. So looking for the title, which currently resides in Scotland, to end up in a different country. No country has ever retained the title. So it'll be interesting to see where it lands this year. No doubt I'll have something special for the scoring up in my mind too. But we're planning to do a lot over the next few months. We've got some great guests lined up over the next 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to be draft focused, NFL draft, best ball draft, strategy focused. So, this is a good time to lock in now, get excited for the season, and do the work. So really, really excited. Next week, Connor McGill is joining us, otherwise known as Hot Seat Mags. He'll be joining us from the Dynasty Hot Seat headquarters. If you are familiar with the Channel 5 show hosted by Sam Queck and Dermot O'Leary, you would have seen him, despite being a Kansas City fan, winning a trip to Cleveland in a Cleveland Browns jersey, which I will be mentioning and ripping him for on the show next week. But a very knowledgeable guy will be breaking down night one of the NFL draft, which would have happened this time next week. So we'll be breaking down the night one of the NFL draft, a preview to the rest of the draft. And again, with that lens of scheme and fit of thinking about where these players are going to be, what impact they're going to have. We're going to have immediate thoughts to the NFL draft next week. So make sure to tune in for that. We're going to have some great guests. As you mentioned, Colm Kelly, he will be on in 2 weeks' time, giving us a best ball and dynasty lens and getting prepared for those rookie drafts. So lots going on. It's going to be an exciting time. Buckle up. Get ready, because this year we're going to put a lot of ships in the harbor. We're going to be like the Spanish Armada. It's going to be so full, people won't know what to do with it. We're going to conquer the waves. We're going to conquer the lands. But more importantly, we're going to do so much winning that we're going to get tired. No, we're never going to get tired of winning. It's going to be phenomenal. Check out the links to Dublin, Scott Fishbowl. Check out the links to FFCC. Check out the link to the sort of article that I guess is going to frame the next 3 months of this podcast, as well as also in there you'll find links to my dynasty rankings for rookies for 2026. But until then, enjoy the week. Enjoy the weekend. It's supposed to be sunny. But until then, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, keep rushing.